In this video, we're going to look at how to use trigonometric ratios, aka trig ratios, in order to find unknown sides and angles. And we're going to look at only right triangles in this video. So this topic is also known to many as Sohcahtoa. So we're going to look at how to use Sohcahtoa. This may sound like another language to you, or you may have done it before. All right, what does Sohcahtoa actually mean? It's actually our three trigonometric ratios, and I'll explain how. S is for sine. The sine of an angle is equal to the opposite over, let's actually write the whole word out, opposite over hypotenuse. H for hypotenuse. And that's our first ratio. Our second ratio, the cosine, C for cosine, of an angle is equal to the A for adjacent over H for hypotenuse. That's our second ratio. And finally, our third ratio, T for tangent of an angle is equal to the O opposite over the A adjacent, A for adjacent. And those are our three trig ratios: sine, cosine, and tangent. But in order to use these and use them effectively, you have to actually know what an opposite is, what a hypotenuse is, and what an adjacent is. Well, let's talk about the easiest one first. The hypotenuse is the longest side, and it's across from the right angle. So our hypotenuse is the longest side across from our 90-degree angle. Same here. Actually, I could just call it hip for short. That's our 90-degree angle. So our hypotenuse is here. In this triangle, our hypotenuse is over here, across from the 90-degree angle. Now, the slightly tricky one is how to figure out what's the adjacent and the opposite. Well, it depends on where the angle is that you're either being asked for or that's given to you in the question in addition to the right angle. So in this case, the angle is over here, so the adjacent is right next to it, as that's what the word adjacent means. The angle is here, so the adjacent is touching that angle right here. In a triangle that looks very similar, the angle is up here, so the adjacent is up here. Down here, the angle is here, so the adjacent right next to it, touches it, is over here. And finally, for this one, the adjacent next to that angle is up here. And the opposite is the other side. It's opposite the angle that is in the question. So in this case, the opposite is over here. In this case, the opposite is right here, opposite that angle. And in this case, it's up here, opposite that angle. And finally, opposite that angle, we have our opposite over here. Okay, so now we have a triangle, and we're being asked to find an unknown side, x. Now, it's a right angle triangle, and we see an angle, we see a side, which tells us that Sohcahtoa will be able to help you. Now, in order for it to help you, of course, you have to know how to spell it. Otherwise, this will not go well. All right, so you want to just write that word down so you have that frame of reference. And ask yourself two questions. And your two questions should be, firstly, what do I have? What do I have? And what do I want? What do I have? What do I want? So we have a 7. What is that side called? Well, our angle is over here, and that side is opposite that angle. So I have the opposite. What do I want? Well, I want to find x. X is opposite our 90-degree angle. Therefore, I want the hypotenuse. So I have the opposite, and I want the hypotenuse, which means that I will be using the ratio that has opposite and hypotenuse, which is sine. So the sine of an angle is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. Now the sine of the angle that we have, in this case is 38 degrees, is equal to the opposite, which we already said was 7, over the hypotenuse, which is x. We don't know what that is. Whenever we're trying to find an unknown, we can cross multiply because we have a fraction here. So we can put our sine 38 over 1 and then cross multiply. So once we multiply our sine 38 by x, we get x sine 38 equal, and then our 7 times 1 will just be 7, but I'll write it down as 7 times 1. That's a 7. Hold on. Okay, so 7. Which means that in order to isolate our x, we can now divide both sides by sine 38, and that will get our x alone. And whatever we do to one side, of course, we have to do to the other side. And so we'll get that x is equal to 7 over sine 38. After plugging that into our calculator, we will see that that will give us, let's see here, that will give us 11.4 approximately, 11.4. And that's how you use your trig ratio to figure out an unknown side. Now, of course, I can flip it and give you two sides and ask you to find an unknown angle. So let's look at how that would work. So here we go. We have two sides, and now we're being asked to find an unknown angle. As I suggested before, you want to have that word, that little device written here. So Sohcahtoa, again, totally need to know how to spell it or else it will not work for you. All right, so Sohcahtoa. And now we're going to just ask ourselves, what do we have? What do we have? We have two things now. So what do we have? We have that side. That side is opposite the angle in the question that we're looking for. And we also have the side that is right next to it. So we have the adjacent. What we don't have, we don't really care about, but we don't have our hypotenuse. All right, so we have the opposite, we have the adjacent. Opposite and adjacent. What ratio uses the opposite and adjacent? Well, if you take a look here, we have opposite and adjacent here, so it implies that we'll be using our tan ratio for this problem. And so the ratio states that the ratio states that the tan of an angle is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. In this case, we don't have the angle, so the tan of something unknown is equal to the opposite, which we already stated was 13, over the adjacent, which we stated was 15. Now, this may look very confusing and difficult if you don't know what's supposed to happen here. We would like to isolate our angle. Right now, our angle is being, you could say it's being tangented. That's not actually a word, but I just wanted to say it to prove what I'm going to say next. We want to do the opposite of tangent in order to get rid of tangent here, and that is the inverse tangent. So we're going to have to inverse tangent both sides. In your calculator, that will be second tangent. So in your calculator, what you would type is second tan 13 over 15, and that should give you the correct answer if you are in degrees, which you should be. So go ahead and do that with me. I'm doing it myself. So we're doing inverse tangent 13 over 15, and the answer should be 40.9 degrees. And that's how you find an unknown angle using trig ratios.